Let's say good morning to Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Congressman, how you doing?
Morning, boys. How are you guys?
We're doing very well this morning. Let's just
that thick coffee you guys get, you putting that in the veins, you ready to go? You ready to charge into your day?
We're knocking back some Kona this morning. It's so good, we're actually going out of the mug instead of intravenously as we normally do.
Wow, so you're enjoying it. It's not more just for medical reasons.
Yeah,
well, it is for medical
once.
reasons. We found out this week, up to 5 cups per day means you can live 15% longer.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so by our math, we're going to live to be 406.
Yeah, I'm proud of you guys. That's what this world needs, another 300 years of you guys.
All right, let's jump right into things since last we talked. The horrible attacks in Paris, the response, the horrific response from our own president. Where do you want to jump in on this one?
Well, look, I mean, let me just, obviously the attacks were awful, and it just goes to prove, and I'm not saying this is an I told you so, but I've been talking about ISIS for 26 months, and, I've said, look, we gotta take it to them when they had just moved into Fallujah, when we thought they were still Al-Qaeda. At every step of the way, we should have done something, and the president's reaction has been 50% of what it should have been. When France bombs targets like they did today and last night, great. I'm proud of the French for doing it. The question is, why were those targets still in existence in the first place? Why didn't we destroy them months ago? I mean, especially hard targets. They should all be destroyed.
See, I wanted to ask you that. You're a pilot. You know these sorts of things, and we see the video, and we hear that they took out command and control. They took out a munitions bunker. Why is that stuff still standing if we've been hitting them for over a year?
It doesn't make sense, and that's what doesn't make sense to me. You claim on the one end that the Islamic State's not a real threat. It's the size of the United Kingdom, but it's not a real threat. But on the other hand, supposedly there's so many targets that you're just getting around to bombing command and control facilities. I mean, I don't get it. I don't understand the answer to that, except to say that we have been so adverse to any kind of civilian casualties that it's quite possible that we avoided those because we thought some civilians might have been killed. And now it gets to a point where they're, maybe desolate enough. There's no ISIS in there. It's just literally a building, and maybe we blow it up for show. But, look, the president's press conference, only President Obama, of all the presidents in history, and hopefully all the presidents of the future, only President Obama can turn a press conference about a terrorist attack in Paris, turn it into a press conference about himself. And that's exactly what happened.
Let's stay on the president's comments for a moment. We have his comments yesterday. Speaking to reporters in the Philippines, this is the president talking about efforts to block Syrian refugees entering the country. We have more than 30 governors right now saying we don't want to do this. Let's step back. Let's make sure we are vetting them appropriately. This is the president's response to those comments.
I cannot think of a more potent recruitment tool for ISIL than some of the rhetoric that's been coming out of here during the course of this debate. And I would add, by the way, these are the same folks oftentimes who suggest that they're so tough that just talking to Putin or staring down ISIL or using some additional rhetoric somehow is going to solve the problems out there. But apparently they're scared of widows and orphans coming into the United States of America as part of our tradition of compassion.
Can you think of a better ISIS recruiting tool rather than simply words, Congressman?
Yeah, I can think of a better ISIS recruiting tool is when they put up videos of cutting off people's heads and don't get killed for it. I can think of a better ISIS recruitment tool is the weak United States response to their growing territory. I mean, what best pulls in more jihadists than success of the jihad movement? Look, I mean, again, if it wasn't so ridiculous, it would be humorous. But the president is completely, it's his left-wing Chicago politics ideology that believes that if something is going wrong, let's blame somehow the Republicans or something in the United States. So now it's the Republicans' fault. Again, he's overseas, so I don't know what happened to the president being above politics when he's overseas. But somehow, it's our fault. No, look, here's why I don't want the Syrian refugees in this country. Not because I don't have compassion for them. I have a ton of compassion for them. But because you can't screen intentions, so you don't know what somebody's intentions are. But the other reason is if we're not going to put 200,000 troops in Syria, which nobody's suggesting we do, despite what the president says, if we're not going to put 200,000 troops, we're ultimately saying that we're going to rely on the Syrian people to secure their own country. Well, we're draining the country of the very people that are going to be needed to secure it. They're never going to go back to their country. This isn't temporary asylum, it's permanent. So that's why I don't want the refugees here. He can blame me and say I'm scared of orphans, which is fine. Nobody believes I'm truly scared of a 5-year-old orphan. But if he wants to say that, it's his typical rhetoric and feeding the base.
But then again, when he throws that typical rhetoric out, you contrast it with photographic and video evidence that we've seen where I don't see any women and children amongst many of these groups. I see draft-age males.
Yeah, that's right. And it's two things. Number one, it's draft-age males. So, those could easily be where the terrorists are recruited from, especially if they get to their country and they're disaffected or it's not the culture they wanted, or they're not willing to assimilate into Germany or France or the United States. But the other issue is, again, it's the 18 to 35-year-old men that we're going to need to overthrow Assad and kill ISIS, isn't it? But instead, we're just letting them leave. I mean, it's ludicrous. And you see what happens in Paris. You're going to see what happens in future terrorist attacks that I guarantee are coming. They will be some of these refugees that come there, slip in, and create harm for people.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger with us. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. Speaker Ryan yesterday saying that a task force was working on legislation in the House to address the refugee effort and what the governors want, and that's a pause to make sure we're safe. What do you know about the status of that legislation? Might there be a vote sometime even this week?
Yeah, I think there's going to be a vote on that tomorrow, I believe, on the idea of a pause. Now, I just want to say this to everybody. Let's not hyperventilate on the issue of refugees. We want to pause. We want to be able to assess what what the requirements are for somebody to come in. But the reality is the FBI director, James Comey, said there's no way to actually screen people's intentions. There's no way to get a perfect background check. So it's much smarter to say we're going to pause and take a look at it than what I'm hearing out there, which is people, once again, there's talk of shutting down the government to defund this. Look, the shutdown the government train, we need to put that aside for a while. But I think we have to be very aggressive. We're going to have legislation tomorrow. And the American people are on our side on this, so I think we need to play this right. I think we need to be aggressive. And this is going to put our nominee, whoever it ends up being, in front of Hillary Clinton in the presidential race. So let's play this correct.
And one of the things that I noticed, too, is, the president talks about our robust system for vetting and all that, and can take up to 24 months. And as you mentioned, the FBI director and others, they do point out that if you have no paperwork, you have no ID, you have no identification, that vetting process doesn't mean anything. Right, absolutely. And let me say another point. So there are thousands of Iraqis and Afghans who worked as translators for U.S. troops. This has been a kind of an area of passion of mine, that have been waiting to come to the United States. They were promised, if you're a translator on the battlefield for us, we will, bring you to the United States. They're still waiting to come in because they're going through a vetting process that in some cases has taken 5 years. And despite showing that they fought for the United States, there may be an I not dotted on a piece of paperwork that sets them back another year. And a lot of these guys are being killed by the Taliban for having worked with the U.S. Well, we're going to put unvetted refugees in front of these men and women. In front of these guys. It doesn't make sense.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger with us. It's Riley and Scott on WROK. I wanted to ask, reaction to Secretary of State John Kerry's comments yesterday. And you can find the full context in a lot of places, but actually the context only makes things worse. John Kerry yesterday said, there's something different about what happened from Charlie Hebdo. And I think everybody would feel that. There was a sort of particularized focus and perhaps even a legitimacy in terms of, not a legitimacy, but a rationale that you could attach yourself to and somehow say, okay, they're really angry because this and that. This Friday was absolutely indiscriminate. It wasn't to aggrieve one particular sense of wrong. It was to terrorize people. It was to attack everything that we do stand for. And again, the larger context actually does not help things at all. There was this strain when the Charlie Hebdo attack happened, Congressman, that they had it coming. Look, you can't say that you can't say that, you can't print that and expect to get away with it. It's too bad it happened, but you gotta ask for it. And John Kerry seems to endorse that line of thinking. Our Secretary of State saying this, Congressman.
It's the most left, so So could you imagine, somebody who said they oppose gay marriage because of their religion, because of Christianity, they're ridiculed by the very same people that are justifying murdering people because Charlie Hebdo did the cardinal sin of drawing a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad. I mean, that's it. Drew a cartoon of the Prophet Muhammad, who I don't believe is a real prophet, obviously. It's absolutely unbelievable. And what you're hearing, I kind of feel like I'm in a simulated world government class, in Berkeley, where we're sitting around and somebody, some kids pretending to be president, some kids pretending to be Secretary of State, and they were supposed to do responses to, a hypothetical attack on Charlie Hebdo. And the Secretary of State from left-wing Berkeley stands up and says, well, we have to understand their position. This isn't real world. Unfortunately, it is the real world. It's, when the French are outperforming us in terms of hawkishness, goodness.
Yeah, well, maybe it's just vocational opportunities. If we gave ISIS members more vocational opportunities, they might not be quite as angry.
I think we need to give left-wing academia some real vocational opportunities. Go work in a factory in Rockford and do some real work for a change and maybe understand what it's like in the real world, trying to provide for your family and not sitting there reading the book and trying to figure out how murderers went wrong when they were children and, maybe their diapers were incorrect. It's gross.
Congressman, I want to ask about this, too, before we let you go. You have introduced a stronger authorization of military force previously this year, giving the president some latitude to take the fight to ISIS in both Iraq and Syria. If the president doesn't seemingly have the will to move forward with increased military force, if he does not want to expand the fight, what is left for the House and Senate to do? Is the best thing to at least pass an authorization of military force so people know you would support the action, whatever action the president might take?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, constitutionally, the president has a lot of power in terms of how to execute, military attacks. Our job is to fund it and authorize it, because you can't have 435 commanders-in-chief. It just doesn't work that way. But the president initially gave us an authorization that said basically no ground troops and 3 years. And I said, no, the president's not going to make Congress complicit in tying his hands on a failed strategy. And so I basically stripped all the limitations and introduced an authorization to use a military force that basically said, kill ISIS. That's your job. And if you want to have a limited strategy, that's your choice, but you're not going to put that on Congress. And I hope we get a chance to pass this.
He's Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Congressman, as always, thanks for taking time out of your morning for us.
You bet, guys. Take care.